Well, welcome everybody. Here we are with another episode of the Green Scene podcast and another opportunity for you to learn about some of the most interesting and exciting and maybe things you didn't know that are happening in Greene County today. We have our guest again. Welcome back, Mike Belding.
Thank you.
Career veteran and former Greene County Commissioner, and just almost a walking encyclopedia. You just do so much research, Mike, and we really appreciate that about the things that are happening in and around Greene County and affecting our lives. And both T.R. Mahle is here with me. I'm Shelly Brown. We're your co-hosts today because we want to learn. So thank you for being here, T.R.
I appreciate it.
So we're going to talk about, and I think most of you may have heard this term recently, data centers. We're going to talk more specifically about the proposed data center that will be in Greene County, Pennsylvania. So first, Mike, just for those of us who, and I was this way a month ago before you told me about it, really, what is a data center?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share some information and clear up some misinformation, perhaps that's been spread about this specific site. But data centers are kind of a new phenomenon last couple of years. They came out with the increased requirement for data. Right. So cloud usage, where you take all your pictures and you upload them to the cloud, so they're available on every iPad and computer and everything that's linked to your account. That takes up some space. The newest ones are all the AI requirements. If you've ever used Chat GPT and the whole slew of apps that came behind that, that's the requirement that has grown so quickly in the AI world that requires these data centers to be pushed everywhere.
That's definitely on the rise.
Yeah. And
fast.
And it requires huge computing power and capability and storage.
Okay.
Because you can imagine how much data is being pushed just from an individual, that I sit there and I put pictures together on Chat GPT and I save all of them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they got to be somewhere.
It's really not a cloud floating in the sky, guys. There's a bank here right on this earth that's holding it. Yeah.
Right. And it has to be reachable by high-speed internet and a lot of power requirements. Okay. And that's some of the issues that we'll talk about today.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, really, and of course, the thing we're most interested in here is who and what is being proposed for the Robena Coal Refuge Disposal Area. That's where it's going to affect us most that live here close to home. So
let me back up and describe the Robena Coal facility. So it was started in the early 80s as a prep plant and functioning facility for the coal industry, right? It sits on the river. It had coal barge access for coal movement, had a lot of water for wash down plant and so forth. And it was used up to 2007 primarily for underground coal and the processing of that and loading it. They took a little step back, used it less when the coal ran out in that seam, but up until 2017, it was used for surface coal preparation and transportation of coal as well. 2017, writ large, it was shut down as a coal processing plant and sat idle for quite a bit of time. It's a brownfield. It has industrial waste on it. It has acid runoff on it. And, in the opportunity to mitigate some of that, Department of Economic Development for the state was involved in developing a playbook that surveyed the positive and negative things about that piece of property, which encompasses about 1,400 acres. And in 2021, published a roadmap to possibilities, right? What is that property available for? There are certain restrictions because it had previous contamination on it. How much time can individuals spend there? Clearly, it can't be residential. There's without a huge expense to
Who owns
to do
the
that.
property now?
So the Legacy Consol Energy Coal Company owned that.
Okay.
And they merged with Arch Resources in January 14th of last year, 2025, and became Core, C-O-R-E, Natural Resources. So that's the current, that was the owner up until this recent transaction to the data center companies.
Okay. Well, I recall on a recent podcast how we talked about, not on this level, but we talked about how our county officials and elected officials are not, their job is not to direct what happens or to approve exactly what happens either, but to look at opportunities to grow the economy of the area. So that's where my question of who, and you mentioned this study that the state did, and that was back in 2017?
2021, that was published.
2021.
Right.
Right.
And that is available online. Just Google DCED Robena.
Okay.
And it'll come right up. I think it's 158 pages or something like that. But the recommendation from that study was industrial or manufacturing, commercial or distribution, or renewable energies. Now, at the time, in 2021, data centers were not even an issue.
It wasn't even a topic, right?
But I would suspect if they were a requirement, that would have been the fourth opportunity because it lines up well with the property that's out there, the resources, particularly the river that's available for the cooling systems of a data center, and kind of it's outside of the community of Alicia, its remote location.
Okay.
So I believe that would have been an appropriate use if data centers were required at that time. So if we jump to the current transition, if you will, from Core Energy, they sold that property in a private property transaction to Bryn Mawr-based Essential Utilities, and the lead company of that is International Electric Power, IEP. And they're going to develop the property for the proposed data center.
Okay. They're going to develop the property in whatever way it's necessary for the proposed data center. They don't aren't going to operate the data center or anything.
Right. So there'll be a lease. So the power part of that will be produced by them.
Okay.
Right now, the proposal is 2 natural gas electric generators. There's a couple significant issues with previously built data centers, and the specific model of this one will eliminate some of those. One of them is electrical usage. And in the past, rate payers, those that consume electric on the national grid, have been required to pay for some of the infrastructure that went in and supported the increased load for data centers. In this case, that is not true. There's 2 reasons for it. One, the natural gas generators that are going to produce power on site and be specific for the increased load of the data center. And the second is most recently federal and state legislation, which is isolating the rate payers, the traditional electric consumers, from the increased cost of data center consumption.
Well, that's good news.
Yes, it is on both fronts.
So, Mike, to make that clear, if I understand this, the data center will be powered by electricity that is generated through natural gas.
That's correct.
So no increase to anybody's electric bill.
Right. And in this model, because of the natural gas generators as producing that, and also the new legislation that
prohibits
the traditional ratepayers from paying for infrastructure that's going to support these huge requirements.
And that was, I think that was one of the major concerns of the general public.
A misconception or just lack of knowledge. Yes, that I think it also.
And the new, out of Harrisburg, the new term is data centers are welcome in Pennsylvania. Bring your own power. Right? You're not going to hook into the grid.
Okay.
We're not going to fear brownouts and blackouts and increased rates for normal consumers. You can come here, but bring your own power. And this is a perfect example of using local resources, natural gas, to produce its increased requirement in electricity to a specific industry, i.e. the data centers.
So it'll generate 100% of what they use and need.
So if you have gas rights in Greene County, this can only help you.
It can only help. That's correct. And, there's a little off this subject, but the infrastructure to get natural gas out of Greene County is not fully matured. So the more that we can use here, the better off we are for that natural gas industry.
For the gas industry, of course.
Absolutely, because you don't have the
transportation costs.
Yeah,
exactly. Or investment in those costs.
Right.
Are there any other misconceptions that we may have heard that aren't
Yeah, so some of the other concerns are water consumption and noise levels, and maybe a little bit less than noise, but light pollution.
Light pollution.
Light.
This place
from
glows?
an industry that was not there, and now it's lit up.
Oh,
at night,
okay.
So let me address the water issue first. So the proposal has 18 million gallons of water coming out of the river daily.
18 million
18
gallons.
million gallons a day. To put it in perspective, 17 million gallons a minute flows by that site. So you're taking 1 minute's worth of 1 day's of water flow
Okay.
out of that river. That's site specific. So if they go upriver and they take some, and they go downriver and take some, that needs to be cumulative over, the conservation district or the water authorities, whoever's looking at that. But specific to people that fish just south of the Robena, you will not notice.
You'll not even notice a decline in the water.
Right. It's 1 minute's worth of water flow past that site. There is no, and this is important, there is no discharge back into the river.
That is important.
So no increased temperature, no contamination, no water pollution. It's evaporated, much like if you remember driving by the Hatfield power plant and you had a little plume of steam every time the temperature changed. Same idea. It'll be evaporated in the process of cooling those data centers.
That's what I was. So the water that's being used to cool does not go back into the river; it evaporates.
Correct.
And is there anything in that evaporation? Is it dangerous in any way?
No, it's just river water.
It's just river water.
Right. And it's cleaned. It's
nothing's been
purified
added
before.
to it, or okay.
No. It's been processed with filters and so forth.
To filter it. Yeah.
But there's no
cleaner than it was when it left the river.
Came out of the river. Yeah. So
Mike,
no contamination.
let me ask this: does a frozen river affect that at all?
That's an interesting question.
No, because the river only freezes on
The surface.
the minute surface compared to the depth of the river, right? So the intakes will be well below the freezing level.
Okay.
So that's the water issue. So the noise pollution, I think, is probably the most relevant to the conversation for Alicia residents down there.
Okay.
So much like you hear a natural gas compressor station
Yes.
out somewhere, this is of the same monotone drone of hum kind of issue. The community should be engaged with them, the industry, to make sure that they mitigate that as much as they can. Put the noisiest part of this complex as far away from the community as you can, right?
Right.
And then each of these generators, presumably the generators are the noisiest part, are going to be housed in their own building. And right now they're saying 55 decibels at the fence line, so the property line between the community and this industrial complex, 55 decibels. That's a conversation level decibel, just like the conversation we're having.
No
right
kidding. I was imagining those big noise stoppers that go around some of the gas areas that are doing things that make noise.
Yeah, and there are ways to mitigate that. So you can reflect noise. Like if you drive down the interstate and you see these big walled noise abatement walls, right?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can reflect noise away from that as well. And I would just say that, the advocacy for the community is to have the least amount of impact on the community from its normal state.
Most certainly.
So like noise is probably the most concerning because of that just dull hum that you may encounter
Right.
24 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
So move that as far away, use the noise abatement techniques that we have and try to mitigate that. And then light pollution, and there are ways to do that, much like when you go down the interstates, again, all of the lights are shining down. We don't have horizontal beams shining into the community and so forth. So I think those are all adjustable issues, and the tenants of the town, the community, really need to come together and figure out what their leadership is going to advocate for.
That was going to be my next question. When you talk about the community doing this, what is the process for that? Do they do it as a county?
Is it a negotiable thing? Or?
Because they lack zoning, and we talked about this last time with the roles of government, the layers of government are not hierarchical, right? So the township supervisors do not work for the county commissioners. And the county commissioners do not work for the state representative or the senator. They're their own entities of government. At the lowest level, you may have a house, an HOA. Right? That's a quasi-government kind of thing that takes care of specific things in the housing development. And then you would have township zoning, of which we don't have any
in that area
area. But there needs to be an organized community representation for two reasons. One is property owners by law can be reimbursed for depreciation of their properties, market value of their properties, if an industrial complex goes in next door.
Is this a state or federal law or just general or what?
It is I believe it's a state law, but it's backed up by federal case law as well. And you can look it up. It's called the Compensation for Industrial Induced Depreciation of Private Property. And there's a bunch of case law that sets the precedents. And in its simplest form, if I own a house that's valued at market value, sellable property, market value of $150,000. And this neighbor industrial complex comes in, and now I can only get $120,000 from my property because there's noise or traffic or
ugly,
right? What I'm looking at out the window and so forth. I can, through an attorney, it needs to be represented in a legal basis, be compensated for the difference of depreciated market value. So if I was at 150 marketable, this complex comes in and now I'm 120. In a transaction, they owe me $30,000. Not next week, not three. It's a noted loss of value. So you would have to sell your property to incur that loss. You can't just arbitrarily
say, hey,
get another $30,000
or complain at how it's bothered your lifestyle.
Right, but that comes up in the next opportunity, right? So there's two compensatable values here. One is the market value of your house and the depreciation of that value. The second is, and this is negotiated as a community, and that's why, we really need a leader to stand up down there as a community leader, is a community development agreement that's negotiated between the community that's affected and the industry owners. And there's a bunch of examples online where you can look at what other communities have had, and it's likely not a cash settlement, but it's likely something like children's play area or a playground, or
they can develop the community.
Support and increase the value of overall of the community with the benefits.
Right.
In kind.
Right. So a couple of things have come to my mind, and I don't know how feasible they are or not, but things like, and just for something to think about, if that development has to plow snow between their buildings, why do they not plow the snow off of the streets of the community? Right? There's 24,
which would save the township.
There's 24 houses down there. So that's a benefit they could,
an example.
They could do. On the far scale of that, likely less feasible, but they're producing electric for their plant. Why don't they contribute electric to the community? 24 houses compared to this whole industrial complex. So
kind of like bartered gas when the people get what they call free gas. But it's bartered really, but
So, those are probably two extremes, really easy to plow snow. I don't even know the legality of giving electric to the community, but those kinds of things. And I think it should be out of the box thinking. What does the community need? What is valuable to them? And forever.
And like
as long as that plant or that
operating.
Data center is going to be there, it needs to be recurring and of value to that community.
They must negotiate in good faith.
I would say yes, and be contracted. Legally bound. But I also say you should start with your negotiations up here. Just everything that you think is possible, reasonable, and usable. That could be a big bonus.
Yes.
At least to mitigate the negatives.
Right. So we know every tax authority in Greene County is looking for alternatives for income.
There you
right?
go.
Because as the property values continue to go down and people leave and the coal industry decreases production, all of those things are negative things. Well, here's an opportunity to look for something that's unique and a direct benefit that either you take funding that you don't have to pay and they pay,
Right.
or, in the case of the township, school district, and county, there'll be taxable assets on that property that currently aren't there.
That's true,
generating
too.
traditional tax revenue. So I think you need to look at that kind of out of the box and what is the best benefit for the 24 houses and the residents that live down there. And as long as that plan is there, it has to be a perpetual contribution to keep up. So one is plannable. You can plan for the future. And then what are the benefits to the communities?
So, Mike, let me ask you this. If I don't live in one of those 24 houses and it's not going to, it being there does not affect my electric bill, is there any consequence to me living in Waynesburg that nothing?
No.
Yeah.
There's no. Now, we have talked about jobs. I think we might have touched on that
At the last
at
one.
the
yeah,
last
we
one,
did.
potentially. Doesn't bring a bunch of jobs after the construction part of it, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of people to employ either. I mean, there are jobs available almost every industry in Greene County right now
Yeah.
that are fulfilled by people commuting into Greene County.
Maybe they could offer them to those 24 houses.
Some sort
first.
of a first choice.
Yeah, and I understand there's an initiative with the CTC
Okay.
to specifically train to the requirements that would be hired down there.
That's
so
good.
they're taking high school kids,
Yeah.
And there might be
Preparing the job.
a pipeline there to keep kids at home. I mean, we struggle with that as well, right? So I think those are discussions, and that certainly can come into this community development agreement where they say, hey, there's, and I don't know the numbers, there's 12 high school kids that live in Alicia. Is there an opportunity for them to work next door and stay at home?
Yeah.
Right.
Or even in the county or that end or wherever.
Right.
Just
Right. So one of the things that initiated this is, one, the misinformation that was out there, but the other is, and I'm certainly an advocate of protests and op-eds and all of those other things. But when you do that, you have to make sure you're right, because the facts still matter. And there's just so much negative misinformation that it's like fear mongering, right? We're going to make everybody feel terrible,
Scared,
and scared, and this is going to ruin everything that you've worked for the, and it's going to have an impact. There's
kind
no
of a
question
panic
about that.
in a way. Yeah.
But I don't think it's near as bad as people are standing up and yelling about. The forever we have been in an extraction business in Greene County.
That's true.
And, we lost a family house that I grew up into the coal industry, and now my dad lives in a new house, right? So it's emotional. And it's probably a strategic inflection point in your lives as that happens. Mm-hmm. But it will be okay down the road if you get due compensation.
Yes.
And there's a process to do that. This came up in October of 2025. I would say they're behind the power curve in representation of the community already. And they need to be, there needs to be a leader down there in Alicia to bring the community together and work on these two specific projects, the property owner compensation and the opportunity for community development agreements.
Creating that community development advisory or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
How many jobs approximately would that create after the construction?
Or even during construction. How long is the construction?
I think they want that so they want to be producing electric out there by 27.
Oh, it's not that far away.
Full up data center, I think they're talking about 2029.
All right.
As a note, right now there are no tenants that I know of that are going out there, right? So the IEP, the energy producer, electric energy producers leaning forward with the project, anticipating leasees that will come on that piece of property, but to date there are not any.
So so that's how long it's going to be developed. I think TR, you said, when are people going to be able to have jobs, their permanent jobs?
Yeah. And how many? After the construction's gone, how many people will that place employ? And
The numbers that are available right now, there are 1,500 construction jobs out there. I think, like we saw with the initial part of the natural gas industry here, that a lot of those will be imported with specific skills that we don't possess.
Yeah, that could happen.
Right. But
some of them.
But there's not. Here's people coming to live in Greene County that don't have anywhere to stay.
Yeah.
Right. So you see the RV parks again. You see that little bump up in specific requirements that people made revenue over in the initial part of the natural gas industry as well. So 1,500 jobs, and then 150 permanent data center jobs.
Where does that information come from?
This is from the proposal on IEP's website.
Okay. All right. So it comes from the source.
I assume that's probably shift work. That'll run 724, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That is shift work. And then the gas turbines, they're talking about 40 permanent jobs to run the gas turbine part of that with electrical production. So, somewhere between, in the end, 100 and 200 permanent jobs.
Yeah.
Which is not insignificant in Greene County.
No.
And a different skill set than we currently have. People are going to have to be trained.
That's being addressed at the CTC.
To do those specific jobs like that.
So that, given the time frame that you just described, how urgent is the formation of this community advocate group and the negotiations that we've talked about?
Yeah, I think they're behind the timeline already. Most organizations like that meet once a month, right?
Yeah.
You're not getting a lot done in a monthly meeting. So I think they need to stand up a community action group or a committee or whatever and start doing research. A lot of the research that I do, it's just on the internet. Mm-hmm. And when you see a headline that says IEP is doing this, go to the IEP Corporation
to get the
thing and get the information, right?
The factual information.
The factual information. So you're not spreading misinformation and again, putting fear in people that is not required.
So as of right now, there is not a community advocating for anything, community group?
Not an organized one, anyways. And where is there an obligation on the part of both IEP and CORE that says they that they will, they're probably not going to instigate it, but that they will, or are they, I guess, just as a moral obligation for them to accept that interaction when that organization addresses that?
I think, naturally people want to be good neighbors.
Yeah.
Right? And they know they're coming to a place that they're going to change the environment.
Yeah.
And just like the coal industry does, just like the natural gas industry does, they give back to the communities.
The foundations and all of that. There are great input from many of that, much of that industry that we never had before they were developing here.
So here's a new opportunity. You have a new neighbor in an industrial park that's doing something totally different than we're used to, and that community needs to get together and take advantage as much as they can and negotiate. It will require a lawyer. There's no question about that. And the agreements will have to be, in the legal format and agreed to and all those other things. But I think you'll find generally that industrial complexes are community, that they're in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to try to be a good neighbor.
Right.
And the sooner they get started on it, the more beneficial it will be for the future.
There's a lot of small pop-up meetings, advocating for and against this all the time. Is CORE sending a representative to these, or are they all kind of one-sided right now? Or
I have not seen this specific. I know IEP was down in Alicia for a community meeting one time.
Okay.
It may be more that I'm not aware of. They answered some basic questions, but it was so early in the process. The community in particular didn't have anything but negative feedback. There was not enough information.
Have enough information, yeah.
Yeah. But I think and the other thing is to look at where these data centers have been constructed already and learn
what they did.
Yeah. So most of them complain about brownouts and rate increases. We know that should not be an issue here.
Yeah.
They complain about commercially produced water consumption. That's not an issue here, right? They're taking it out of the river. Noise can be mitigated. Light pollution can be mitigated. So it takes a lot more than, standing on the courthouse steps and protesting.
Yeah.
I think time is better spent in organizing information, analyzing things that have been done, and
coming up with proposals.
With your proposals.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Mike, I think your sharing of this information and the research that you've done to do it is beneficial. And we're hoping, let's just pray that those out there that are most affected by it or most interested in it will step forward, somebody as a leader, and begin this process. Again, this information is what they needed to hear. I'm hoping that all of our listeners recognized, if you heard something that you didn't know or you had been misinformed about before, I'm glad we were able to bring that to you. So thank you very much, Mike.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And folks, also there's an article in the most recent Greene Scene magazine that just came out, which highlights what we've talked about here today by Mike. We thank you for that too. So, and if you have questions and want to learn more, he can give you sources for research. And we'd all of us. You don't have to be in Alicia to be concerned about this or to care about it. So anybody out there who's interested in supporting the formation of a community group to take advantage of the opportunities and to address any concerns that there may be. Before we go, though, we just love to do this. We pull something on you before.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. Mike, again, I thank you for that information, but we'll just see how well informed you are with these questions. So I'm going to call this one the Greene County Starter Pack and ask you a few questions about our area and community and see how you answer. So first of all, and these can be your opinions, not necessarily a right or wrong answer, I want you to name a place in our area that everyone should visit.
Enlow Fork.
That was quick.
And and I bring that up because I think next week there is a organized flower walk.
Oh yes, the Wildflower Walk.
The Wildflower Walk. And if you've not been on it, it's a perfect opportunity to get somewhere you'd never go.
Yes.
Enlow Fork, and have somebody that really knows about what they're talking about walk you through the wildflowers in the spring.
That sounds great.
Yep.
A local business that you love.
I just ate at Five Kids Candy on High Street. When I worked for the county, I ate there 4 days a week. And it's convenient. It's right up there on High Street. But two, every day they have a lunch special, and they're never bad.
And they're really good. What was his special today?
Reuben.
A Reuben.
That's one of my favorites.
One of your favorites. There we go. Now, this one might take a little bit more thought, and I'll make it the last one for you. What is the best, I'm going to call it small town moment, that you have witnessed or experienced?
I'll revert back to the summertime in the Greene County Fair. And
Okay.
I've been doing that since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And I still like going, I dip ice cream with the Farm Bureau, and I walk the Midway every night, and I go to most of the 4-H events.
And know everybody you see almost.
And, almost everybody.
That's a perfect answer.
Yep.
All right. Well, once again, thank you. Folks, we're going to wrap this episode up, but we appreciate your listening. And thank you also to T.R. Mahle, our outdoor editor for the Greene Scene magazine, and brought up some really good questions. You spoke for a lot of people today, T.R. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And we'll have another one coming up. We expect you to tune in to the Greene Scene podcast. Thank you. Have a great day.